I get most often on my Q&A videos, but also on my normal YouTube lessons is what should I practice, how long should I practice it, and what's the most efficient way to learn to play guitar. And those kind of questions are something that, I mean, certainly for a YouTube comment, I can't really answer that for you, because it's going to be depending on what you already know and how you learn things, and what you like to practice, and also what you want to learn. So instead of trying to answer that, because it's a question that keeps coming back, and it's also logical that it's very important to people that they're investing all this time in playing guitar, and then they want to do it as well as possible. So since I can't really answer that question, because I don't think there's one answer for everybody, it's going to be different from person to person, then I'm just going to make this video, which is a vlog on trying to evaluate what you're practicing, and trying to figure out if what you're doing right now is working, and so that you can plan the way you practice and think about the way you practice in a more efficient way. So the way I decided to do this is to sort of divide it and focus not on what you're learning, because again, that varies. If you play gypsy jazz and if you play fusion jazz, there are different skill sets that you want to work on. So that's not going to be relevant for everybody. But what is more efficient is to just look at what level are you working on, because if you want to learn something, so if you can figure out what it is you want to learn, and you have an idea about what it is you want to achieve with practicing this, so you have a basic skill, and then you have to sort of take that into your playing, and you have an idea about what the final stage of that is when you can use it. But you actually have to be able to map a way of practicing this that takes you from the basic skill to where it's actually gonna be a part of your music and where you can use it creatively. Because I think Morten Fairstone also made a video where he talked about this, that there's no magic involved. We don't have this thing that if you just practice your arpeggios, you sound like Pat Metheny. That's not how it works. So you have to sort of find different ways of going from practicing your Pat Metheny, practicing your arpeggios, and then applying it to your playing, and then hopefully it'll appear in your music and in your improvisations. So sort of the way I've mapped it out is to take, well, there's 3 levels of how you're working on things. You work on the basic skills, then you work on taking the skills that you've sort of already worked out on the instrument, and you're applying those to the music. And then there's like a final stage where you're just working on music, and then you're trying to evaluate that. And actually the last part of this process is going to feed back into how you work on applying the skills, and also what skills you need to work on. So that's sort of it's almost like a circle, but at the same time it's also just different levels of how you are working with the different topics that you're practicing. And I think if you think of it like that, then it's a little bit easier for you to say, well, I'm working on my arpeggios, but I'm not expecting them to magically appear on a song that I hardly know. Instead, you're going to go, I'm working on my arpeggios, and I'm going to take them through this song that I'm working on, and then once I start playing, because I also worked on these arpeggios on that song, I can also use them when I'm really making music. And I think that's a much sort of healthier and much more efficient way to think about this. So basically we have 3 levels that we're working with here. We have learning the skills, using the skills, and then just making music with the skills. And what I'm going to try to do now is I'm going to take sort of each level and talk a little bit about what might be some exercises that will sort of fit in that level of working on something. And it's not going to be, this is not an exact science, so there's going to be stuff that could be sort of in both or in several of them. And it's going to sort of, it's not going to be completely so that, oh, this is only going to be learning the skill, it's not applying the skill. Those things, it's not, it's a bit a gray area where one begins and where the other one ends. And that's just because playing music is not an exact science. There's very little you can do. And I think actually with learning in general, I think that's actually how it goes. So there are no sort of well-defined borders from this is this and not that. But at the same time, I think it's important to just think of it like this, to be able to see that whatever you're practicing, make sure that you're actually putting it through this process where you can say, well, actually I'm working on the basic thing, I'm applying it, and then hopefully I'm getting it into my playing. Those are sort of the main areas of anything that you're trying to learn. that you get through that, and that's how you're going to end up having the ability to use it when you're playing music, hopefully without worrying too much about it. So if we take the first level, which is just the basic skill, so a basic skill could be your alternate picking, or learning your scales. It can be chord voicings. Maybe it's also actually working on feeling subdivision, playing something in time, and those are sort of so that's going to be like metronome exercises, scale exercises, playing a bebop theme with a metronome on 2 and 4. But it can also be just taking the arpeggios and then maybe playing them through a song. So you're in that way you're just making an etude. So etudes, of course, are also very closely related to this. Like playing a bebop theme with a metronome, in terms of rhythm, is actually using that bebop theme as an etude. So that would be the kind of thing that you would do there. I already have like tons of videos, no, not tons of it, but I have a few videos on scale practice that shows you how I think about this. So those are the kind of things, and yeah, to me, when I'm working on this, I like to keep the way that I work on things open-ended. So I rarely do stuff that's always the same, except if I'm playing an etude. So I'll also have periods where I'm like playing Kreutzer etudes or something like this. But most of the time I try to sort of always vary what I'm doing, so that the way I know the skill is going to be as flexible as possible. But that's just about how I work on it. That you can check out the videos that I made on scale practice. That will give you actually a pretty good picture of this. Then we have the level where we are applying the skills. So now we can already play arpeggios, to use that as an example, or we can already play drop 2 voicings, and we need to apply it, and we need to use it to get it into our vocabulary. That means that we're just taking the arpeggios and then playing them through a song, or taking the voicings and playing them through a progression or a song, and working on how it sort of fits in a piece of music that we already know is one thing. Like if you're trying to learn, and of course that can be more than just like if you're studying take the A train and you're studying arpeggios, then is of course one way of doing this, but it's not going to give you sort of the complete picture of how you make music with arpeggios. So that's just an exercise, and maybe if you want to apply it to the music, then you want to sit down and then just spend some time coming up with some melodies and some lines that sound good with an arpeggio. So if I'm working on arpeggios and I want to work on, say that I'm working on Take the A Train like I just played, then I will just take the arpeggio and then now I'm just trying to come up with some C major melodies that is using the C major 7 arpeggio. Spending some time composing that, and then the next level above that, but still we're not really making music, we're just consciously trying to apply the arpeggios, would be to just play the song with a backing track or with a metronome, and then trying to use these arpeggios, and consciously working on using the arpeggios and figuring out how to make lines with them and stuff like that. That will still be just applying that skill. And I wouldn't really consider that the part where you're making music. The last level is using the skills or making music, and this means that you're really just trying to really play a piece of music. And there are things that I think actually a lot of people forget to do this, that we kind of stay on the level where you're just working on a specific thing. So you're still trying to apply something, and you're not spending so much time making music. At the same time, if you see people practice, at least if I see people that I look up to as performers, like Pat Metheny or Kurt Rosenwinkel, practice, then they are actually making music when they are practicing also, and they are trying to sit down and actually play a piece as a whole. So what I mean with that is that you want to work on the aspects of your playing that are really important, that are also a little bit hard to work on if we're coming out of all this thinking in details. So if you play a song, sit down and play a song, then really play the theme. Make sure that you're setting the right atmosphere that you want to have with that theme, and that you're not using it as an excuse for playing fills or something like this. Play a solo that's realistic, so that means that it should have like an arch, it should have some sort of ending, middle, climax, and a good beginning and a build up, and that you're worried about how all those things works. And then also think about that you're going towards a theme, and this is also where you should be aware that you don't want to practice. If you're working on this, then you're probably not playing a version of the song that's 20 minutes long, because it's unlikely that you will be in a position to solo on a tune for 20 minutes, and that you're able to. And if you're not able to do that, then maybe it makes more sense to actually, for instance, work on making solos of 1.5 minutes that actually have some variation and that doesn't sound like some guy standing there practicing. So you have to have stuff happening, and it has to make sense what's going on when you're practicing. And I think that's sort of an important thing that can be hard to justify doing this, but it is also sort of the only place where you can really look at your ability to be a storyteller, or your ability to set down a mood. And those are really important things when you actually play music, but we're not working on them because we're thinking about rhythmical exercises and arpeggios and stuff like that. And then you're getting to work on this, and you're not checking. It's also the place where you're going to check and where you're going to get some feedback and seeing, well, am I using the stuff that I'm working on? Is it coming out? And also, when I'm using it, does it really work? You know, does it make sense? Can I actually put it into the rest, and so that it doesn't stick out? Those are the places where you do this. And the way you evaluate that is probably by recording yourself. Or, I mean, a lot of it you can also just tell right away if it works or not, but there's a lot of stuff where it's probably better to record yourself, so you have a good idea about what's going on, and where you can really listen to how does it actually work. And also psychologically it can be healthy to listen to something right when you recorded it, and then a week later, and then another week later, and then see how you feel about it then, because that varies also a lot. You're really listening in different ways as you move away from the performance, which is also something I think actually people consciously will take into account when they're making records, and they won't always mix it right away. For instance, they will wait and then they'll mix it, and then you will hear stories about that if you talk to people recording a lot. So this is of course a video of me talking a lot. I don't think I played at all in this video, but at the same time, if you're practicing something, I think these sort of 3 ways of thinking about what you're working on and seeing if you're sort of taking everything through those different steps is a good way to evaluate if you're actually getting where you want to go with what you're working on. And also if you're listening to yourself playing and you're thinking, well, it doesn't have this or that, then you have to reevaluate how you're practicing it, just the basic skill, or maybe reevaluate how you're working on applying it. And then you have a little bit a better sort of a way to think about it, and where you can sort of attack it from another point of view, and hopefully that will help you get to wherever it is you're going. Because I think, I think I already mentioned Morten's video where he talks about that it's not enough to just learn the scales and then magically you'll become Pat Metheny or George Benson or whoever. I think he mentioned somebody, I don't remember. But it's a good video on this topic, because I think it's important that we realize that we have to not only practice sort of the raw materials, you actually have to practice using the raw materials and refine that process to actually be able to get a piece of art out of your raw materials. And if we take sort of the whole process into the perspective, and when we're evaluating what and how we're working on it, then it's more likely that we'll end up with something that's closer to where we want to go. At least this is a lot of how I think about how I work also, and it is, since I get the question all the time, it is obviously important, and it's hard to make any general video and give you any sort of specific advice on this. I mean, I can make a list of skills that I think you have to be able to to play a jazz standard in the way but that's then gonna be in the style that I play. And if you're a fusion player, then maybe it's different. If you're a gypsy jazz player, then maybe you need different skills. So yeah, it's depending on so many things, as I already mentioned. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think. I think this is more about opening a discussion, and it's more about starting to sort of be a little bit critical about how we are thinking about practice, and also be realistic about it, because that's something that's often lost when teaching instruments and when learning an instrument, and how we approach this is that most of us have these gaps in the process of learning something which will almost involve magic. And yeah, there's a huge shortage of magic in learning any kind of guitar playing. So so you need to eliminate the magic part of it, and actually figure out how to go from A to B, or B to C, or C to D. So that's how that works. Let me know what you think, and I hope you survived me talking so much about this topic. And then I'll see you with a new lesson on Thursday.